On this edition of the program, let's me and you have a talk about Charlie Kirk's assassination and political violence in today's America. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for September 12th, 2025. Your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you in Austin, Texas, and just me and you today. Apparently they cleared out the office on Friday, and so no guest. We're not even really going to do an update. You guys know where to support the show if you want to support it. Instead, I just want to have a conversation with you, the listener and viewer of this show. Because it is my opinion that we are at a crossroads in America. And we are specifically at a crossroads in something that I have cared a lot about my entire life. And that is our online world. A distillation and refraction of our actual back and forth, and one that we are still wrestling with exactly how much it connects to, quote unquote, the real world. But something happened yesterday, and that was an assassin for whom I would love to have information that would put to rest a lot of questioning about. Unfortunately, they are still on the loose. They laid atop a building at Utah Valley University, and with a high-powered bolt-action rifle, shot a bullet through the neck of Charlie Kirk. I don't know how much you know about Charlie Kirk. Do you know a lot about Charlie Kirk? Are you somebody that's just heard his voice a lot lately, or did you really have an opinion? You don't need to tell me. I'll just do my spiel, just so you understand from my perspective where I see Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk is a combination of two of the most revered figures on the right. William F. Buckley, somebody for whom very much defined what Republican-led media could be, and then Rush Limbaugh, somebody who, for my opinion, perfected it. They both not only espoused conservative views, but they did it in very distinctly different ways that were compelling and exciting. Both of them had something in common. Those that heard the messages of these two men found a playbook so they could explain their positions, which they looked at as counterculture, to others. Now, the Buckley side of this comparison for Charlie Kirk is that Buckley understood that there was something about college campuses that really, really, really mattered. More and more people were going to them, and yet they were remaining a bastion of liberal thought and cultural indoctrination. And so he founded various different groups that were meant to give young conservatives a home, even if their professors would revile them for it. The Limbaugh side is in the provocation, the elocution, the poetry, and the pugilism. Somebody who would not be afraid to take two steps over the line if it meant that he could signal to his audience that he was unafraid to defend a way of life that he thought was central to the very civilization that he revered. Charlie Kirk was born in the early 90s. He was 31 years old at the time of his death on Wednesday. And in those brief 3 decades, he founded Turning Point USA, something that, like Buckley, in fact, it swept out of power the legacy of the organizations that Buckley created. He had a pipeline for conservatism on college campuses. Truly now a countercultural movement. He inspired and excited Gen Z on a level that I don't think people really fully reckon. But he also created a media empire, a regular podcast, appearances on almost any media outlet that would have him. He became extraordinarily influential within Trump world, initially becoming an assistant to Donald Trump Jr. during the 2016 campaign, and then continuing to be a trusted advisor for Trump world, specifically when it came to hiring and firing people for this second administration. One that Charlie Kirk did go above and beyond to help secure, transferring Turning Point USA to not only being a pipeline for college talent, but also a door-knocking and voter registration organization in swing states in 2024. Something that was mocked, not only inside of the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party as well, that they were an unserious first-time operation that was going to waste the money of Republican donors. And while it's very hard to judge exactly how much influence Charlie Kirk or Turning Point USA had in the re-election of Donald Trump in 24, he certainly was a part of the mosaic. The death of Kirk is something that immediately stirred a lot of opinions. I've spent most of today on Twitter, and these are just some of the clips that I found.
To my great fellow Americans, I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. Charlie inspired millions, and tonight, all who knew him and loved him are united in shock and horror. Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth. Charlie was also a man of deep, deep faith, and we take comfort in the knowledge that he is now at peace with God in heaven. Our prayers are with his wife, Erica, the 2 young, beloved children, and his entire family, who he loved more than anything in the world. We ask God to watch over them in this terrible hour of heartache and pain.
People can finger point all they want. Look at the record. Look at the actions of what we are doing. I don't think a single person who has dedicated their entire career to preventing gun safety legislation from getting passed in this House has any right to blame anybody else but themselves for what is happening.
This is a dark moment for America. Charlie Kirk traveled the nation, joyfully engaging with everyone interested in good faith debate. His mission was to bring young people into the political process, which he did better than anybody ever, to share his love of country and to spread the simple words of common sense. On campuses nationwide, he championed his ideas with courage, logic, humor, and grace. It's long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible.
Well, look, the bottom line is this is a time that all Americans should come together and feel and mourn what happened. Violence, which affects so many different people of so many different political persuasions, is an affliction of America. And coming together is what we ought to be doing, not pointing fingers of blame.
This moment requires leadership that brings the American people together as opposed to trying to further divide us. Political violence in any form against any American is unacceptable, should be denounced by everyone, and moving forward, we have to figure out a better way to come together, not as Democrats or Republicans, but as Americans.
Well, what for us? Well, everything has changed. If we didn't know it already, there is no longer any middle ground. Some of the American left are undoubtedly well-meaning people, but their ideology is pure evil. They hate the good, the truth, and the beautiful, and embrace the evil, the false, and the ugly. And they literally will kill those with whom they disagree, just as their predecessor, leftist Marx and Stalin and Lenin and Pol Pot and Fidel Castro did. We must know that.
For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country. From the attack on my life in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, which killed a husband and father, to the attacks on ICE agents, to the vicious murder of a healthcare executive in the streets of New York, to the shooting of House Majority Leader Steve Scalise and 3 others, radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives. Tonight, I ask all Americans to commit themselves to the American values for which Charlie Kirk lived and died, the values of free speech, citizenship, the rule of law, and the patriotic devotion and love of God.
The clips of Trump speaking were from the Oval Office, and we will get to where we are going from here in a second. But before we go any further, since this is just me and you talking, I'll admit to you that it's hard to ignore the personal side of this. And for me, it comes in 2 phases. Number one, boy, do I not like a world in which podcasters get shot dead in broad daylight for opinions they have. Now, obviously, I'm not in the same realm of Charlie Kirk. I'm not a partisan, nor do I necessarily revel in the idea of having particularly shocking or controversial opinions. I don't like debating. But still, the line today will not be the line tomorrow, and I'm not a fan of the general idea. And then, of course, there is the fact that while Charlie Kirk is 10 years younger than I am, he does have one daughter that's the same age as mine, and another that's a few years older. And so it is at this point that I want to wish all of my condolences and the best to the Kirk family, his wife, and 2 surviving children. Even thinking of what it would be like to leave my wife and children and the life that they would have without me is something that Doesn't feel good. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. But man, we sure had a lot of discourse around this. And that brings us back to the online part of it. The idea that these message boards that we have created for ourselves, that we look at as, like it or not, a lens on the world, sure had themselves a day. Now, in my perfect universe, the death of any political commentator, any head of a movement, would be met with entirely uniform disgust. That's the beautiful thing about America. America, we are free to scream, we are free to yell, we are free to denigrate, we are free to praise. But it is because, we hope, that our better angels rein us in from doing anything worse. When somebody breaks loose on this core tenet, it should be incumbent upon society to react with shame and disgust. And yet, I've been around these internets for long enough to understand that playing too cool for school or diving all the way into gallows humor is something that's often rewarded. And so, jokes like condolences to the bullet for touching Charlie Kirk's neck were also inevitable. What I was very sad to see was any level of partisanship. Edgelords are going to edgelord, but there should be no question that the murder of movement figures is a bad thing for our society, regardless of where you would like to land on the political spectrum and who you are going to support at the ballot box. Let me say this unequivocally. Before we get into the larger question of political violence, when it comes to me, I don't care if it was Hassan Piker. I don't care if it was Nick Fuentes. I don't care if it was anybody that you might name that has any kind of notoriety in the political sphere. And the two people that I just named, I have major philosophical disagreements with. But if they were shot dead in the street, I would be incredibly sad and I would offer any kind of condolences to their friends and family and those that cared about them. Because that is not what we do in America. And yet, we saw a lot of context police. You can't talk about Charlie Kirk unless you talk about the following things. This is a list I got from Mehdi Hassan's Twitter. Here are the actual facts for those with conveniently short memories. The man who targeted and killed Democratic state lawmaker Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark in their home in Minnesota in June was a Trump supporter. The man charged with the attempted assassination of Pennsylvania Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro in April was a Trump supporter. The man convicted of orchestrating a series of he says hootings. I'm going to assume he meant shootings. At the home of 4 Democratic officials in New Mexico in 2022 is a Trump supporter. The man who tried to kidnap Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and assaulted her husband Paul in 22 is a Trump supporter. The men who wanted to hang Mike Pence on January 6 were Trump supporters. The man who killed the son of Obama-appointed District Judge Esther Salas in 2020 was a Trump supporter. The men who convicted of trying to kidnap Michigan's Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer were Trump supporters. The men who sent pipe pipe bombs to the homes of Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, and other top Democrats in 2018 were a Trump supporter and the man who killed left-wing activist Heather Heyer while driving his car into a crowd of counter-protesters in Charlottesville was a Trump supporter. Now, I got quibbles about some of the framing here. First, because I don't believe that anybody who has committed violence should be sorted directly by voter registration, for example. I don't know exactly how much that tells us about who or why it happened. In fact, it's at this point that I am going to go back to one of the things that everybody who has heard me on episodes that have in any way touched on political violence will now know as old hat. It is the opinion of this program and indeed me personally that any political motivation that you would ascribe to somebody who commits violence is not applicable to mainstream political thought. To wit, while indeed the shooter of Melissa Hortman in Minnesota, but a few months ago, was said to be a Trump supporter by his roommate, he also wrote a letter to the FBI saying that Governor Tim Walz personally told him to kill Democrats because Tim Walz wanted to be a senator. Do I believe that? No. I believe that that man, Vance Bolter, was very disturbed. And to be quite honest, I don't care who they were registered to vote for or who they told what when it came to political support, if the reason why they are doing it is because they opened up their sock drawer proverbially and heard the voice of Tim Walz to go kill somebody. I don't know if that's what actually happened, but it might as well have, for as much as I think that politics had to deal with that specific issue. And if you have any questions about that, you can go back to the stuff I made when it happened and you can hear me say damn near the same thing. I've been extraordinarily consistent on that. I've even said it when things are a lot closer to mainstream ideology. For example, the shooting of Steve Scalise. That was a shooter who, according to his own Facebook postings, very much believed that Donald Trump was a Russian agent. He was a fan of MSNBC programming. And I don't believe that anybody at that network, nor the people that were talking, deserve the blame for that. I believe he deserves the blame for going out and shooting somebody who thankfully survived. Which brings us back to what happened on Wednesday. Because I do believe what happened Wednesday is likely to be different. And I've been trying to work through my feelings on this all day. But I think I've got them together enough that I can now tell you. I would have felt differently about Charlie Kirk's assassination if it happened when somebody broke into his house. I would feel differently if it happened while he was stopping to refill gas on the way to this event. I'd feel differently if it was on the way to the stage. But I can't really look at it as anything else but a political message when it happens on stage. Regardless of the motivations of the shooter, and again, we don't know as of now, the message that was being sent is if you talk like this, we will kill you, whoever the we is. And it is as much a message to anybody that would follow Charlie Kirk as it was to Kirk and his family. Now, who knows what the shooter was objecting to? My priors going into all this is that if it were indeed political, then it would either come from the left, for which you would have a litany of causes: gender, race, gun control. If it is from the right, almost assuredly, it would come from a community for which Kirk has been at war with for years, and that is the Groypers. These are race essentialists. Racist for short. But don't worry, there's more to them. They're also anti-Semitic. They really don't like Israel. Charlie Kirk is a defender of Israel. So if it were a Groyper, that would be my guess as to why he died. Now, there are some other theories out there. Ian Carroll posited one that it was Mossad. Mossad killed Charlie Kirk. And that is a theory, and I don't say this lightly, that is retarded. Let me just make that clear. But I have a hard time looking at this as anything other than a politically motivated death on a level that transcends stuff we have seen before. It does not fit my rubric of being outside the mainstream thought. And part of what has cemented it for me is some of the joy that I've seen from people that didn't like Charlie Kirk. It's probably been the biggest bummer. People I know, some people I love, that are gleeful, joyful, excited that Charlie Kirk died. There's ways I can rationalize it. People aren't real on the internet. Charlie Kirk's not a real human. He's a cartoon villain that has real life consequences. So this isn't a 2-year-old's birthday party that's going to have to be without daddy. This isn't a household that's going to have to grow up without a father. This is Scar falling into the canyon. This is Skeletor being defeated by He-Man. And if it happens in an ironic way, all the more for the lulz. Because after all, this cartoon person had a real effect on things. We're now at the dawning of fascism. And so those responsible do need to pay. This might be, well, the beginning of an armed uprising. I don't really know what to do with that. I don't agree with it. Nor do I particularly agree with the idea of throwing Charlie Kirk's takes back as a reaction to why you shouldn't be sad about a man dying. You know, takes come and takes go. Some takes are great, some are bad. But if Charlie Kirk one time said that sometimes gun deaths are going to have to be necessary if you were to protect the Second Amendment of the United States, only for him to die by a gun, I don't really know what that adds to the discourse. Nor does it supersede what matters the most to me, which is a core violation of the compact we all have as Americans who value free speech. Let's even assume that the take is bad. Was it a death sentence? Did he deserve to be executed for it? Boy, there's a guy who's had plenty of bad takes. I sure hope not. I'd like to be here for my daughter's second birthday. So what do we do? Well, there is some hope that maybe the ugliest parts of the internet today are not real life. This is a YouGov poll taken today as I record this, September 11th, which, just as an aside, Jesus. Is it acceptable for a person to be happy about the death of a public figure that they oppose? 78% said unacceptable. 9% said acceptable. Well, that's not a lot. That's good. Democrats had the highest rate of saying that it was acceptable at 11%, so still not a ton. Republicans had the lowest at 6% that said it was acceptable. Independents were in the middle at 8%, as they always are, those independents. And while I'm sure that there's some justifications for what being happy is versus being concerned about where things are going, yada, 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 I was heartened to see that. That general people had that perspective. I want to read something by Cenk Uygur, the founder of the Young Turks, and for my money, one of, if not the biggest mouthpiece in American new media for progressive politics. I'm going to read this verbatim here. A while back, I put out 3 rules for the internet. Number 1, when we disagree, we fight. Number 2, we have a beer afterward. Number 3, when we agree, we unite. I got a lot of flack, surprisingly, for the line about the beer. People would ask, oh yeah? Would you have a beer with Charlie Kirk? Well, we did. And I'm glad we did. Because now I won't get to. Yes, Charlie and I disagreed on a lot and about really important things, but somehow we didn't lose our humanity. We were still fellow Americans. We can all choose to hate each other now. That's a normal human reaction. We can choose to blame each other, and I'm sure we will, endlessly. Or we can defy the voices of division in this country and have a beer together, this time in grief. If you really want to strike back at whoever did this, listen to each other instead of hating one another. They want us to hate each other. Treating each other as brothers and sisters, as a united America, would be a historic act of defiance. And since I'm on the left, I'll go first. For everyone on the right, and most especially the Kirk family, I am sorry for your loss. I share your grief, and I want you to know our hearts are with you. And reading that today clarified what I think is the only lesson that we can have in a polarized society. Because I've seen a lot today of grief, especially from the right, sometimes glee from the left, but a lot of finger pointing. And so I will say this. Regardless of where you assume the level is on your side of the aisle, and regardless of where you assume the level is on the other side of the aisle, hopefully we can agree on 2 things. The first is that we should not have political violence in this country. If you don't believe in that, to be totally honest with you, man, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know if I'm the kind of person that you're going to really enjoy listening to. Because I want to make it very, 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 very clear that I am here to help explain and understand the political world for which I hope you can apply so democracy works for you, so you can support and pressure candidates in a way that matters, so you can have your issues, regardless of what they are, be heard. But I will never, ever, ever cross the line into in any way even insinuating that political violence is worth it. The second thing is that because of our polarized society, there isn't anybody from the left that the right is going to listen to, and there is nobody from the right that the left is going to listen to. Which means if there is to be any progress, it is going to have to come from self-improvement, from not looking across the aisle and trying to see humanity that may or may not be there, but rather tending your own garden. And so while I appreciate Cenk making a comment like that, because I do believe that the very essence of him doing it is signaling to his crowd that while he is about as passionate as he can be advocating for his positions, and he is as loud as he can possibly be. And I have heard stories from a bunch of different angles that he is a pain in the ass to deal with when he is trying to get something and you are in the way of it. He said that the line stopped with violence. And more than that, he was happy he had that beer with Charlie Kirk. And so when he was arguing against him, he knew he was arguing against a person and not a cartoon character with real world consequences. I think that's a good lesson. I think that while politics is in many ways the art of hyperbole, the art of caricaturization of your enemies, the art of persuasion, there is a responsibility that partisans have to understand that at the end of the day, we are all Americans. And hurt feelings is one thing. Orphans are another. As we await more information on the shooter, the FBI has a picture up. They've got a reward. There's some leaked information about things that are scrawled on the gun or the bullets, but we will await confirmation on that before we go forward. I just want to tell you that I appreciate you being a part of this community. All we can ever do is lead by example. And I've efforted to create a community around this show that is, by its very baseline, tolerant and understanding of our entire political spectrum. That includes left, right, and center. For those of you that are grieving the loss of Charlie Kirk, I offer you my sympathy. For those of you that would prefer to not give Charlie Kirk the time of day, I would appreciate if you understood that others in our little corner of the internet are having a bad time, and respect them as you would hope they would respect you. If somebody that was near and dear to you and your media diet was to all of a sudden be gunned down. It's anybody's guess where we go from here. But I know that me and you are going to have our say. And I know where I'm going. And I hope you come with me. That's it for this episode. Till next time, This is your old pal, Justin Robert Young, saying goodbye.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show audio.